Henley's Hotel was situated on the west cliff of Blupuddle-on-Sea, on England's beautiful east coast. Offering rooms and dining for 5 shillings a night, it was frequented by lower middle-class couples, businessmen and occasional single females like the former dancer Maggie Mansion. The hotel had a large dining room offering a set menu or an a la carte for those with more pennies in their pockets, and adjacent to the dining room was a sumptuous ballroom for those who needed the exercise to help remove the too many calories served up with their evening repast. An orchestra of 3 accompanied the terpsichorean activities of the more active residents. The sound of the ensemble could be heard until 11:30 every evening, except for Sundays, and then the guests quickly departed to their rooms after the last waltz. The night porter, Fergal O'Flaherty, would visit the ballroom shortly after midnight to ensure that all the gas lights were off and all the doors locked shut. King George III started the seaside fashion by taking his family for seaside holidays to Blupuddle. The water was bone-chillingly cold, but there was salt air and marine life, and eventually amusement arcades, fish and chips, and sometimes even the sun. Prince Albert was a great believer in the health-giving benefits of the sea, and this was significant in his choice of Blupuddle as a family resort. Victoria herself partook of sea bathing for the very first time at Blupuddle, and you can stroll down to the marine parade beloved by Victoria and Albert and visit Queen Victoria's bathing machine and admire the famous Blupuddle Tower that has yet to be completed, like the new North Pier. The delights of Blupuddle-on-Sea include the fish and chip shop, disgusting comic postcards galore, the ride on the donkeys, and the Punch and Judy show. The vivacious Maggie Mansion was a member of a professional troupe of dancers for most of her adult life, and at the age of 78 she had recently retired. She had been staying at Henley's Hotel for about 6 weeks, and during her sojourn at Henley's she was to be seen most nights cavorting around the ballroom with any male that was brave enough and fit enough to match her frolicsome capers. Miss Mansion had a long professional career as a dancer and had travelled far and wide from Eastbourne to Torquay. The hotel manager revealed that after her first month's stay at the hotel, she paid her bill with a cheque which was returned by her bank. The manager said he wanted to get rid of her, but the owner insisted that she stayed at least until the money she owed was paid. So it was agreed that she would clean and wash up in the kitchen during and after meals, which meant that they could reduce the hours of Brendan Bacon, the kitchen porter, and Mary Moppet, the cleaner, thus saving money. She also told the manager that she had another job starting soon at the end of the pier show, as she had agreed to undercut the wages of the present lead dancers with the show Maud Moodle. The manager also divulged that he had received a letter from Boris Johnson, the Blupuddle Tower and Pier builder. Mr. Johnson was very annoyed about a letter from Miss Mansion in the Blupuddle Mail concerning the Blupuddle Tower and Pier. Miss Mansion had claimed that there was been no work on the Blupuddle Tower or the pier for 9 months, and Mr. Johnson had stated that the metalwork needed to rest for 12 months before any future work could take place, and Miss Mansion claimed that this was a deception for financial gain. In his letter, Mr. Johnson told Mr. Edwards that if he did not keep Miss Mansion quiet, that he would silence her himself. The murder. At about 15 minutes past midnight on the 15th of August, Fergal O'Flaherty, the hotel porter, a handsome 60-year-old man from Dunoon who was known as Homie, was checking the doors in the ballroom when he noticed some clothes on the floor in the unlit ballroom. Searching through the clothes to see if there was anything of value, Homie noticed his hands were covered in blood, and he realised he had a woman's body in his grasp. Thinking that she was seriously injured or dead, he called for Graham Edwards, the hotel manager. Mr. Edwards arranged for the gaslight to be lit, and he soon recognised that the woman on the floor was Maggie Mansion, and he could see that she was dead. Mr. Edwards locked the ballroom doors and phoned for the police. Sergeant Bodger was in charge of the Blupuddle police flying squad, as he had a very fast bicycle, and he had soon ascertained that the woman was dead and had probably been murdered or had had a nasty accident shaving. He had closed the hotel, sent all the guests to the rooms, assembled the staff in the guest lounge and checked all the public rooms. Apart from the ballroom, the only other signs of a crime was in the kitchen, with blood on the floor, a large kitchen knife covered in blood on the kitchen table, and signs that a body had been dragged from the kitchen and into the ballroom. Within 2 weeks, Bodger had managed to reduce the number of suspects down to 14. Constable Copper pointed out that one of the suspects was Maggie Mansion herself, and another 2 suspects were over 100 years old, so Bodger reluctantly agreed to reduce the number of suspects to 11. After 4 weeks, an editorial in the Bluepuddle Mail suggested that the local police were incapable of solving the murder, and as a result, Sergeant Bodger was replaced by Inspector Codling Catcham, an experienced officer who had already nearly solved 1 murder during his 40 years' service in the local force. Inspector Catcham set up his headquarters in the public bar at the hotel and insisted in sampling all the drinks in case they had been poisoned. After 3 days he was satisfied there was no poison present, and demonstrating his quickness of mind, he decided to have the blood on the kitchen knife tested to see if it belonged to Miss Mansion, and he also had the knife tested for fingerprints. Fergal O'Flaherty, known as Homie, was the Henleys Hotel night porter, a handsome young man from Dunoon. He was known for his gentle and caring character, and apart from 24 convictions in his youth, his reputation was unblemished, except for 2 convictions for manslaughter in the last 10 years. He was something of a loner without friends, and even his ex-4 wives did not have any contact with him, or he with them, as stipulated by the judge. Homie was a clean-living man. Apart from the excessive drinking and gambling, he exhibited very few problems, although he was banned from 6 public houses in Blupuddle-on-Sea. He lived on the top floor of the hotel and received very few visitors, except for the occasional debt collector and bailiff. Miss Mansion was known to have a deep-seated aversion to Homie, and when he hopefully knocked on her door a few times, he was always greeted with a welcoming tirade of "Go away, you disgusting excuse for a man. If you touch me, I will reveal more of your despicable habits to everyone." But apart from these occasions, they seemed to have a good relationship. Nobody seemed to know what his duties were at the hotel, except that he wandered around the building, locking and unlocking doors during the night. The manager acknowledged that he had to receive 10 complaints about the fact that Homie had a master key to all the guests' bedrooms, and he had to warn him against contacting or visiting guests during the night without good reason. 5 missing ladies' handbags were found in his room, but he explained that as the hotel had no lost property department, when he found a handbag he put it in his room for safekeeping, and he had forgotten to tell anyone. Mrs. Two-Step Trotter, the ballroom manageress, told Inspector Catcham about the problems she had encountered with Miss Mansion in the ballroom. Miss Mansion was always in the ballroom after dinner except on the 15th of August, and on 2 occasions she had upset the Honourable Henry Henson Grieve, whom she had refused to dance with, telling him that if I wanted my feet trod on, I would prefer an elephant to do it. She also had a number of arguments with another of the guests, Mary Martin of room 26, who was known as Mad Mary by guests and staff at the hotel. Mrs. Martin accused Miss Mansion of stealing her dance partners on a number of occasions. John Slicer, the head chef, admitted that he'd been disgruntled with Miss Mansion after she told him that his cooking skills were as blunt as his knives, to which he had said, "Another remark like that and I'll fillet you." John Slicer also told the inspector that Brendan Bacon, the kitchen porter, and Mary Moppet, the cleaner, were planning to get their own back on Miss Mansion for stealing their hours. He also revealed that Elsie Bean, the breakfast cook, threatened to boil Miss Mansion after she told her she couldn't even boil an egg. Graham Edwards, the hotel manager, confessed that he wanted to see the back of Maggie Mansion after he had been visited by Father Montague Broom, who told him that Miss Mansion was banned from his church for spreading false rumours about him. Father Montague Broom said he would never do such things with a woman who was not a Catholic. After the fingerprints on the kitchen knife were found to be those of Fergal O'Flaherty, the night porter, and Sergeant Bodger found him with Maggie's blood on his hands, he became the main suspect. Fergal O'Flaherty told the inspector that he had found the knife on the kitchen floor and placed it on the table during his nightly security round before he found Maggie's body. A search of Fergal O'Flaherty's bank account found that he had banked 7 cheques from 7 of the suspects of £50 each, and he also received 3 cash payments of £50 from the 3 other suspects. Mr. O'Flaherty claimed that the monies were payments from people he was blackmailing after he discovered that they were all members of the Bluepuddle Swingers Association. He said some could afford to pay more, but because he was a socialist, he decided to charge them all the same amount. All the payees told Inspector Catcham a different story, telling him that the £50 were deposits from members of a consortium to O'Flaherty, who was the treasurer of the group, and they were going to pay another £150 each towards a total of £2,200 in order to purchase the Henry Hotel for the consortium. Maud Moodle, the end of the Pier Show dancer, had been seen on 2 occasions at Henry's Hotel after she had learnt that Maggie Mansion was replacing her in the show, but it was not known who Maud Moodle had visited on these occasions. Inspector Catcham spent many hours in the bar tasting some fine old wines and sampling some choice old cigars, pondering over who was actually responsible for Maggie Mansion's dastardly murder. But after carefully searching all the evidence, he decided that the murderer was actually Fergal O'Flaherty, the night porter, who was found with blood on his hands and his fingerprints on the murder knife. However, he also decided to charge all the other suspects with murder, as he has decided that they had paid Homie, that's Fergal O'Flaherty, £50 each to carry out the vicious homicide. All 11 suspects were charged and a date was set for their court case for February the 20th, and it was decided that they would all be tried together as their cases were all linked.
Take me out to the ball game, take me out with the crowd, buy me some peanuts and cracker jack, I don't care if I never get back, let me root for the home team, if they don't win it's a shame.
Has anybody here seen Kelly? Kelly? Has anybody here seen Kelly? Find him if you can, he's as bad as...
The trial was a long one, as all the defendants pleaded not guilty, and it lasted nearly 2 days. The judge decided that 10 of the defendants could not give evidence as they were not of noble birth, and as the Honourable Henry Henson Grieve was probably illegitimate, he could only have defence counsel. Unfortunately, his defence counsel fell over after leaving the pub and was unable to represent him. The prosecuting barrister and the judge soon summed up the case, and it took the jury nearly 10 minutes to agree a unanimous verdict. The judge donned his black cap over his wig and black gloves to pronounce the death penalty for all 11 defendants, and said that the law is that thou shalt return to the place whence thou camest, and from thence to a place of execution, where thou shalt hang by the neck till the body be dead, and the Lord have mercy upon thy soul. Unfortunately, the country had only one gallows, so executing all 11 murderers was quite a protracted affair, taking nearly 3 days, with the public executioner having to retire through exhaustion, and the volunteer executioners were called for, and a short competition arranged to decide a winner. The judge had adjudicated that as the Honourable Henson Grieve was probably of noble birth, he should be hung with a silk rope. Father Montague Broom tried to plead benefit of clergy, but when all his previous convictions were revealed, this was disallowed. After a very successful prosecution, Sergeant Bodger was rewarded by being made Chief Constable of the Essex Police Force. Inspector Catcham, on finally achieving a successful prosecution, was made Sir Codling Catcham of Blupuddle, and shortly afterwards he became Conservative MP for Blupuddle-on-Sea. 5 years after Maggie Mansion's murder, Percival Pension, the former bellboy at the Henley's Hotel, was charged with indecent exposure. The evidence against him was very strong, and so Percival decided that he asked for 28 other offences to be taken into consideration, including the murder of Maggie Mansion. Pension confessed that when Maggie first arrived at the hotel, he had carried her luggage to her room, and that she had failed to tip him. So he decided to get his revenge, and on the 15th of August he was in the kitchen looking for something to eat when he saw Maggie Mansion there, so he picked up a knife and slit her throat, then dragged her body into the darkened ballroom. He said that the 42 other stab wounds must have been caused by someone else. The execution of Percival Pension was by comparison a relatively simple affair, and he was soon the 12th person from the Henley Hotel murder mystery to be hanged. Eventually it was decided to pardon the previous 11, and by way of compensation their families were given £5 in recompense. In conclusion, the bad publicity around the murder and the execution of all the consortium wanting to buy Henley's Hotel meant that the hotel went unsold and was subsequently bought by Orbit Housing to house their second-class customers before it started to fall down and was eventually demolished, and a year after that the residents had to be rehoused. The Bluepuddle Tower on the North Pier remain unfinished after the execution of Boris Johnson, the pier and tower builder, and the building fund was found to be empty. The South Pier is currently closed and in need of a £5 million restoration. The ice cream shop is closed, and unfortunately the Punch and Judy is no more with the death of the proprietor. The donkeys have all died, and the fish and chip shop now only sells burgers and hot dogs. Housey on the South Pier is no more, but disgusting comic postcards are still available near the seafront.
the